The house at the end of Blackwood Road. The house at the end of Blackwood Road had always been a topic of whispered conversations in our town. It was an old Victorian mansion with peeling paint, boarded up windows, and a wrought iron fence that was more rust than metal. The trees around it were overgrown, their twisted branches casting eerie shadows on the cracked pathway leading to the front door. For as long as anyone could remember, the house had been empty, its dark windows staring out like the hollow eyes of a skull. But the house wasn't just abandoned, it was feared. The stories about it were as old as the town itself, tales of strange noises in the night, lights flickering in the windows, and the feeling of being watched by something unseen. Some said it was haunted by the ghosts of a family who had died there under mysterious circumstances. Others claimed it was cursed, that anyone who entered would never be the same again. Despite the warnings, the house intrigued me. I'd heard the stories all my life, but I'd never seen anything out of the ordinary. It was just an old, crumbling building, nothing more, nothing less. So when my friends dared me to spend the night there, I accepted without hesitation. It was supposed to be a simple test of courage, a way to prove that the stories were just that, stories. I packed a flashlight, a sleeping bag, and a few snacks, and set out for the house as the sun dipped below the horizon. The walk down Blackwood Road was uneventful, but as I approached the house, a chill settled over me, the air growing colder with each step. The gate creaked as I pushed it open, the sound echoing through the stillness of the night. I hesitated for a moment, staring up at the darkened windows, before steeling myself and crossing the threshold. The inside of the house was just as decayed as the outside. The floorboards creaked under my weight, and the air was thick with dust and the scent of mildew. I swept my flashlight around, revealing a grand staircase, faded wallpaper, and cobweb-covered furniture. The house was eerily quiet, save for the occasional groan of the old wood settling. But there was something else, too, a faint, almost imperceptible humming, like the sound of distant machinery that seemed to come from deep within the walls. I shook off the feeling of unease and set up my sleeping bag in what must have once been the living room. The fireplace was cold and empty, and the only light came from my flashlight, casting long shadows on the walls. I tried to settle in, but the silence was oppressive and the humming grew louder, as if something was stirring beneath the surface of the house. It wasn't long before I heard the first noise, a soft thump, like something falling in another room. My heart skipped a beat, but I told myself it was just the house settling, nothing more. But then I heard it again, louder this time, followed by a faint scraping sound like nails on wood. My grip tightened on the flashlight as I swung the beam toward the doorway, half expecting to see something lurking in the shadows. But the hallway was empty, the darkness swallowing the light. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but the sounds continued, growing more insistent, more deliberate. The thumping became a steady rhythm, echoing through the walls, and the scraping was joined by another sound, a whisper, low and indistinct, like someone murmuring just out of earshot. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my flashlight and bolted from the room, the beam bouncing wildly as I ran down the hallway. But the further I went, the more the house seemed to close in around me. The walls seemed to shift, the shadows deepening, and the humming grew louder, vibrating through the floorboards. I stumbled into the kitchen, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The air was thick with the scent of rot, and the humming was almost deafening now, a pulsing rhythm that seemed to be coming from beneath the floor. I shone my flashlight around, looking for a way out, but my attention was drawn to something else, a trapdoor in the corner, half hidden under a rotting rug. The humming was coming from below. Despite every instinct telling me to leave, I found myself drawn to the trapdoor. My hands shook as I pulled the rug aside and lifted the wooden door. The hinges groaned in protest, and a rush of cold air hit me as I peered into the darkness below. There was a narrow staircase leading down, the steps disappearing into the blackness. The humming was louder now, reverberating through the walls, and the whispering had become a chorus, unintelligible but urgent. I don't know what possessed me to go down those stairs. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was the need to prove that the stories were just stories. But as I descended, the air grew colder, the darkness thicker, until I was enveloped in it, the flashlight barely piercing the gloom. The stairs seemed to go on forever, and the humming was inside my head now, rattling my thoughts, making it hard to think. Finally, I reached the bottom. The room was small, with stone walls and a dirt floor, but what caught my attention was the machine in the center, a massive rusted contraption of gears, pipes, and dials, all humming in unison. It looked ancient, out of place, like something from another time, another world. The whispering was coming from the machine, a dozen voices all speaking at once, their words lost in the noise. As I approached, the humming grew so loud it was painful, the sound vibrating through my bones. The dials on the machine began to turn on their own, the gears clanking and grinding as the machine came to life. And then, in the center of it all, I saw it, a heart, suspended in a glass chamber, pulsing in time with the machine, the source of the humming, the whispers. I froze, horror washing over me as the realization hit. The stories were true. There was something alive in this house, something ancient and malevolent, kept alive by the machine. The house wasn't haunted by ghosts. It was a living entity, feeding off the fear and the souls of those who entered. I backed away, my heart pounding in my chest, but the trap door slammed shut above me, plunging the room into darkness. The machine roared to life, the whispers turning into screams, and I felt the floor shift beneath my feet as the walls closed in around me. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me was the heart, still beating, still pulsing, as the machine drew me in, its gears grinding, its pipes hissing. No one ever saw me again. But the people of Holloway still talk about the house at the end of Blackwood Road, and how, on quiet nights, you can hear the humming, faint but unmistakable, echoing through the empty halls. And they warn, as they always have, to never, ever go near it.